Hi, this is the Chess Dev from the future. This that you're about to watch is about an hour-long Twin Suns lore discussion, as well as brainstorming exercise for the future RPG. And it was mostly done between myself and our lead writer, Joseph Schubert, in order to make sure that we're on the same page before moving forward, as well as just establish basic piece name convention and reasoning behind it. Of course, a link to the playtesting documents for Twin Suns, Medieval, and the Core Rulebook, as well as a link to our Discord, can be found in the description down below. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin. So, what we have right now is symbolisms. We have Aurora and Lilac, the twin sons, the sisters, and they themselves are cursed with this fire thing and their dad, which is his own independent thing, but the dad, Prometheus, also summons different types of fire elementals. And fire can be painful, it can be devastating, destructive, but it can also be that warmth, that light you need to get you through a cold winter or simply a dark night, right? Which is
or used to cauterize your wound.
Yeah, or just, burning yourself on purpose so you don't die. Sure. But then we get into our other pieces. The flare. A flare is this burst, this spout of energy that comes out sort of unexpectedly. It's like an uptick in the heat. If a fire flares, it means it grows bigger for just a moment before going back down. Meanwhile, an ember is what's left of a fire after it has almost gone out, while a fire heart is sort of like an ember that won't ever go out. It is a permanent piece that you can use to relight a fire, right?
Right, or a fire heart is someone who is very passionate.
Yes.
Embers are also another name for those little sparks that fly off of a fire.
Yes. And the conflagration is this intense, powerful blaze.
Consuming.
That
it consumes.
It consumes, and if it can't consume, it will die out and go into being an ember, which is why that piece is so fitting. Now, a hearth...
I'm really happy with whichever one of our other devs figured out. They decided to use conflagration for the name of our consuming piece, because that's what a conflagration is. It's something that consumes.
That was me.
Yeah.
I did that. I came up with the piece all on my own. Can you tell me what a phlogiston is?
It'll be funny how much it stands out. Phlogiston. Kind of sounds like that one river in one of the 9 circles of hell, or something from Hades. Google says it is a substance supposed by 18th century chemists to exist in all combustible bodies and to be released in combustion. So basically, a fire particle.
Huh. So, basically, ancient alchemists considered the idea of an element that is always present in a fire. Huh. A fire particle. Yeah, that's interesting. Not something we should use for a piece name, I don't think.
No. It sounds really cool, but
it doesn't fit what we have.
It doesn't fit with what we've got.
So, by that same sense, a hearth is something warm and homely. It's supposed to be this safe, warm, controlled place, but it's also very telling if a hearth is lashing out. And the second most powerful piece in the battalion is definitely the Greater Flare. It's Lilac, then the Greater Flare, then Aurora.
Right.
So, if that powerful piece is the Hearth, that would mean that that piece is protective
Not Hearth.
and imbued with the idea of being protective towards Lilac and Aurora and Prometheus, and potentially even capable of only giving off enough warmth to keep things going, but when it needs to be protective, to flare up. It's kind of like a designated guardian. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Where Prometheus has put the majority of his long-term power and magic into it in order to create it. What do you think?
I think Hearth might work better if we have... Just a second.
Well, here's
Hold
the
on.
thing. In a moment of siege, where the castle's been infiltrated and all that, and he is currently under attack, Prometheus can create the hearth out of a literal hearth, and put a ton of energy into making this particular elemental.
Okay, I'm back. So what I was trying to say was Hearth sounds like it would be a good idea if we end up adding a medic piece to this battalion.
Which is another thing. We aren't adding every battalion is going to have pieces that can be medics. In the future RPG type stuff. And that could easily be the Hearth here.
Hearth.
Hearth. Hearth. It's Hearth. It's Hearth.
It's not Hearth!
Okay, I'll give it to you that it's Hearthstone, so it probably is Hearth. But it's English. The language is confusing enough, you're allowed to have leeway to fuck it up.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so apparently the British pronounce it Hearth.
Hearth.
But no, it's Hearth in American English.
On another note, so I do like the idea of this piece because it gives the piece more personality in that way. And having two hearths doesn't make sense.
The Hearth.
Yeah. And the reasoning would be, hey, it's literally pulled out of a hearth. The piece was created exclusively as a protector. It was originally made in that way, and that's why it was tied directly to the others. And the two flares could have been made from that hearth, right? As it was given more magic, more fuel. The flares could have literally been split off of the hearth, and now they're flares from the hearth. You know what I'm saying here? Hearth, whatever.
Well, and your Sun Titan, the Hearth would be directly in front of the Sun Titan.
Yes, and he does start there.
Protect it.
It literally starts directly in front of the Sun Titan, and like as this central spot in front of all of the in front of the royal family. I like it when these ideas all sort of just align like this and just come out like bullets from a gun. That's why... Because when that happens, it just sort of ties everything together more. Give me your thoughts.
I think the idea is cool.
Is it worth keeping?
My problem with it is it kind of changes my idea of the flare. But we've already got pieces that are called flares right now. So,
yeah,
like, the flares are what those two pieces are.
Yes.
Can't move quite the same as they used to, but the flares are what those two pieces are. The Hearth is this other one. It's different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what was your old idea for the flare? Give me a picture in my head.
Well, just being just this like attacking based unit.
Which it is.
Not as much of like a protective unit, but more of an aggressive unit, one that's going to go out there and attack. Also, a very agile unit. My first idea with Twin Suns, when I was wanting to make all of the units human or people. Have we decided on if Twin Suns is going to be a human race?
Yes, it is human raced. The kingdom is, at least.
Okay. When I was originally all of them being humans, my idea was the flares were like young teenage boys, because they were the last pyromancers besides the royal family, or at least the last pyromancer since a new set of sparks came about, a new set of people found their spark. So there's this pressure on them, and on them in their very inexperienced age to be leading the to be leaders of the pyromancers, but also younger boys are a bit more agile than an older boy. Like, well, the same reason that female gymnasts peak at a much younger age than male gymnasts, because the female disciplines focus much more on flexibility than strength, flexibility and dexterity.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so being very agile.
Here's
now,
hold on. Here's an overarching counterpoint to that whole idea. King Prometheus has seen a lot of death. He probably wouldn't be comfortable, if he's capable of it. He wouldn't be comfortable bringing almost anyone onto the battlefield with him anymore.
Right, which is why he is summoning the fire elementals. Yes. Which you've already clarified that for me, but you didn't really clarify it very well until after I had already presented my first ideas for it. So,
well, those first ideas for the rankings and namings, maybe not all of them work one-to-one because they're taken by existing names for elemental pieces, but that idea, that concept, because King Prometheus wouldn't be comfortable taking away from the defenses of his kingdom. In fact, he would probably be putting a lot of things in place. But if he knew that there was some reason he had to go out and do something, he would probably be taking the fire elementals with him. At home base, there probably are more normal pyromancers that are much less summoner focused and much more like fireball, AoE, burning hands.
Firebender focused.
Yeah. And those guys are probably just sitting at home. And I want to point out that as far as the first game is concerned, the biggest problem that parasites have is with fire and those who wield it, which means that they want to get rid of Twin Suns, Holy, and Demon the most. And then later on they realize the danger of Frost and have to go deliberately after those as well. But that concept of there being a kingdom mostly dedicated to pyromancy as their main form of training is absolutely something we can stick with for the people and for the social structure of that country.
Right.
And
like,
yeah.
something that I didn't manage to, something that I didn't get written down, since after I was like, oh, wait, okay, so my idea for this, very different than what we want to present as the primary standard for Twin Suns, was that the Flares, the boys, after the twins ended up saving their father from the sun, the twins taking on that power and splitting between them, the boys being nearby also because they didn't want to be left out of this. Nearby, against orders, which the twins were probably also against. They're against orders. But the boys trying to take some of the power from the twins, and that's how the Flares got connected to the suns, so that the Flares are able to orbit around the suns.
Okay. The way I'm kind of picturing this Hearth and Flare duality here is the Hearth was made first, and it was deliberately designated as a protector piece and made to be a short-range, very powerful piece, and that's why it has the power it has in that specific area rather than being sort of long-range. It was deliberately designed to be a extremely agile brawler in that short space to try to take out all of the intruders in that small room, right? And then after that particular battle subsided, this designated very powerful elemental that Prometheus made, since it is a protector piece, ended up also just sort of coming along, and it was mostly tethered to Prometheus at first. But because Aurora and Lilac have that energy inside of them, that physical manifestation, they're essentially avatars of the sun, right? They are able to feed the elementals with their energy and keep them going longer than they normally would, rather than just fizzling out, becoming embers and then eventually dying, right?
Right.
Leading to a deeper connection there, and Prometheus, while basically they're sitting around the hearth, just chilling in the middle, happy as can be, is coaxing and creating and trying to recreate what the hearth was, and ends up creating the flares by putting a lot of essentially mana into the hearth at once. And those end up coming out sort of... Basically, he's trying to clone the Hearth, and he ends up making 2 more.
Yeah.
And because they literally flared out of the Hearth, they're now called the Flares.
So the Hearth would have been like the literal hearth of the castle when there was an invasion directly on the castle.
Mm-hmm.
And King Prometheus
and
making the hearth an elemental to protect that part of the castle.
Yes, and in particular, because that part of the castle, and this castle is, of course, magically imbued, like most things in this kingdom. I mean, come on, the coins themselves are magically imbued with essentially fire magic, so you can always tell them a little bit apart by just like banging them on the table and they glow a little bit, so you can't make counterfeits. That
rubies.
That
glowing rubies.
I lost my train of thought for a second. Give me a moment.
Sorry.
The energies, the mana imbued in the castle was also imbued through that fireplace, that hearth, and resulted in a stronger elemental than King Prometheus intended or could normally create. Hence why, without serious downsides, he's not really able to recreate that same elemental without going through and, like, returning the hearth to that fireplace or, like, somewhere in the castle and then coming out and trying to do research. And that essentially was a moment of discovery. He did it on accident. And I feel like that makes a bit of a fun story beat, especially if we have the player literally do that somewhere in Prometheus's mechanics in his, like, startup arc. And then he creates this hearth, and between that and what just happened to his daughters, he now is a Titan doing things very differently than, say, we haven't named the medieval Titan yet, nor have we named, for example, the guard, who probably is some kind of pyromancer who literally sacrificed himself to a conflagration and sort of ignited an revenge-based passion inside of Lilac. But he did it in order to save her in another moment. I'm just imagining this intense Lycan attack on the castle, and these moments happening essentially back to back, and it's all very engaging. Maybe not entirely back to back, like it can start with, like, the ritual, or after this attack, the king sort of just doubles down, the queen just dies and goes, you know what, I need to harness something stronger. And rather than, say, a magical hearth, he's straight up trying to absorb the power of the sun, and it goes terribly, and his daughters step in.
Right.
Which...
So order of events is the awakening of the hearth, and then the flares, or suns first.
Suns first.
Okay, so hearth, sun, and flares. And then bling in just basic fire elementaling, to which then brought about the conflagrations and embers.
Yes.
Alright.
And he can already have the embers and the conflagrations and the fire hearts, sort of his, like, basic array of elementals that he would summon based on his mana. Maybe he can't do conflagrations yet at the start of the game, depending on how we're doing the power scaling. And, of course, all of these units, once you summon them, you can slowly level them up in different ways.
Right.
So, we'll see. This overarching concept of, like, a Lycan siege on his castle, and him having trouble figuring out how to deal with it, and then eventually beating it back with a small army of fire elementals, is an intense and very cool way we can do this.
Right. Dialing back to the possible medic piece for this battalion and future prospects, the Seer could be a good name for the medic piece. If we focus in on that sort of cauterizing type of medicine, you got this searing pain that's stopping the blood flow, but it's controlled in a specific spot. Or you got, or you place your hands on whatever part is damaged, and you got this searing, this healing warmth, but it starts as a searing pain, making things worse, and then gradually becoming that healing warmth. So Seer could actually work pretty well for the medic piece as
Yeah,
well.
especially if, for example, we have all of its healing also do fire damage, just a little bit, and then the numerous pieces that are immune to fire damage makes that a sort of a synergy thing.
Right. So if you got pieces from other battalions that are in your um, army to fight off this enemy, your seer wouldn't be able to heal those ones very well.
Or at least not as well as a normal dedicated healer. But the seer,
Right.
of course, using this type of healing would probably have some sort of other advantages to its healing, which make, if you're doing that fire unit synergy that is most notable in a dedicated Twin Suns battalion that you're going through the game as, you will have a bit of a stronger healing, I would say, in some ways.
Right.
Meanwhile, if you're using the same unit in another battalion, you would... The downsides would make it a little bit worse than a normal healer. Nice bit of give and take. And... I think the, bare bones concept of having these numerous units that you could try to recruit, because say you are doing your base playthrough as medieval, and you go through and you have a few options to pick from of who you're going to try to, what other titans you're going to try to find and notify next, and you go with the Twin Suns option, and you walk in and sort of start discovering this lore of what happened after the fact by talking to the characters rather than going through and experiencing it. And then trying to potentially recruit members for your cause, and then letting the Titan know, and seeing if you can gain strength inside of, whatever the name of the kingdom is. Did you name the kingdom already?
Brenton.
Brenton? Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a reason for that.
I'm listening.
Let me Google the name again so I remember. Brenton.
And the capital is Phlogiston.
It means... supposed to mean... Brynny's settlement. Brynny is a personal name derived from Bryn, meaning fire or flame.
So fire
settlement of flame. Yeah.
What if that's the country name and then the capital city is just Phlogiston?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
And then a smaller, more dedicated, almost pseudo Wizard's Tower meets castle would be the way that castle is laid out. And it's not as grandstanding as King Arthur's, because I'm not making more than one castle that big. I probably need to start designing the other castles that exist. Ooh, that's a thought.
Okay, so here's a thought. Frostbeast gets 2. It gets the Old City's castle and the war camp of the New Tundra.
Okay, so there would be the ruins in the background, which are deep and have lots of puzzles in them, and are their own little dungeon and various beasts inside of it. And then your starting arc as the Arc Druid would be going into the ruins to find the Titan artifact and actually become the Titan of this city again, and actually have a Titan for this city again, and then come back, realize what's going on with the parasite after your starting arc, and mostly puzzle-based and small combat type deal. So you're sort of doing this...
Okay, Roland, you're...
You say one thing, and it just...
Shogun's battalion starts out conquering the other nations. Palace starts out with diplomatic intrigue. We are coming up with different games for the starting. We're coming up with different sorts of gameplay, like significantly different gameplay based on your starting battalion.
In some ways, yes, but in other ways, no, because the base combat, whenever combat comes up, is going to feel very similar. You're just going to have different units.
Right. The combat is the same.
And we're still going to have...
all the stuff outside the combat is going to be different.
And the archaeological puzzle side of things is a deep ingrained part of this game, because I'm taking personal heavy liberties and inspiration from Legend of Zelda with this.
Like, you can have the Frostbeast starts off with a strong exploration and puzzle feel.
Which means when you go to the Frostbeast area, as any battalion, that area will have that feel of trying to dive in and go through the ruins and deal with whatever threats happen to exist there, and trying to essentially tame, communicate with, and recruit the frost beasts, these big, great beasts that are inside of this area, as like sort of mini bosses, and maybe moving on, and they will either, depending on their loyalty and what you do, join up with the designated Frostbeast battalion, which they would pretty much do guaranteed if you start as Frostbeast, or if you go through their dedicated missions, potentially come join you as whatever character you are.
So with the Frostbeast, is I think we've discussed before that there's kind of like a contract between the beasts and the Titan.
Yes.
And the beasts are honoring that contract through the different Titans.
Yes.
So the Frost Titan the Frost Alpha starts the game having to retrieve the artifact and prove himself to the beasts that he is still a worthy Titan for them to maintain this respected contract with.
Exactly.
And then with another battalion, you would have to figure out some way of...
You have to convince the Frost Titan that your cause is worthy, and then you have to convince the whichever beasts you're trying to recruit to come with you. And these are essentially side quests, and whatever units you have are going with you into whatever the next area is, while that Titan, and whatever he has left, goes and does some other side thing. And as you're recruiting other Titans, they will set off a set storyline chain of events based on what they have and what they're capable of on the side while you go on. And this is my vision for the game, which is this sort of branching path gameplay, where there's a lot of things you could do, and doing any one thing will potentially block you off of other paths. But the problem with this idea is it's a lot harder than a linear storyline. And if we're doing a linear storyline, you would essentially only be starting as medieval and potentially interacting only with these other battalions secondhand, rather than just starting as them. Which all of this lore and stuff is still very important for the character interaction and the player interaction for these worlds, just for it to have this deep, rich history, especially like the recent history, right?
Right.
So, like, say you go to the Frostbeast area, and you have to, first of all, communicate with the Frost Wolves, not see them as a threat, not have a terrible initial interaction with them, and then come back after interacting with them, work your way through a series of quests based on interaction with the Frost Wolves, and then they introduce you to the Frost Titan, and he tells you his issue of, hey, I'm currently trying to tame the Frost Beasts, which are tied to my Titan artifact, and so that I can rebuild this city. And then you help him do that. You go through this puzzle line with this NPC secondary Titan, and then you, after going through that designated dungeon with the 3 frost beasts, the dragon, the leviathan, and the behemoth, you come out of it with a new powerful ally, and you move on. Meanwhile, while you were doing this, the parasite has chosen to execute on a plan to conquer one of your potential allies in the game. And then if you then visit that area with the now conquered enemy battalion, you now have to fight a parasited version. So if you came to the Frostbeast area after they have been successfully conquered and defeated, you now are facing parasite versions of the Frostbeasts. To get through that area, re-weaken that set of defenses, and then move on.
What would a parasite haunted even be?
The haunted themselves are designated to the Titan. So, probably not much. You would end up with more rogue haunted than normal going on, and then you're trying to then collect these rogue haunted and use them as an asset in your fight against the parasited rest of the battalion. And now they're this sort of collectible add-on that have some sort of limitation on where you can use them. Maybe it's for some magical reason stuck just inside of Snow Atlantis. Man, my DM gears are turning with this. Probably because I just had a massive cup of coffee. And I mean a massive cup of coffee.
You were talking about scaling earlier. What we might include is a way of recruiting certain units from another battalion. Like maybe recruiting the wolves from Frostbeast or pawns from Medieval. But you wouldn't be able to add stronger pieces to your battalion unless you had either conquered or formed a treaty of some sorts with the battalion, or with the Titan of that battalion.
Yes.
So, like, you wouldn't be able to have a behemoth on your army unless you were in good standing or had conquered the Frost Titan. Or Kakugyo if you hadn't gotten in good standing with the Jade Titan.
Yes, and the Jade one's very interesting because I think we have deliberately designated certain groups of pieces to certain generals of that battalion, right?
Right. The Jade Titan has all of the soldiers. Are they soldiers or foot soldiers?
They're foot soldiers. But
all the foot soldiers. One of the gold generals has a Kaku. The other gold general has the chariot. One of the silver generals has
two lances.
Two horses. The other silver general has 2 lances.
Yeah. And those are sort of small subsets. We're going to reach a point where we probably are going to have to do what Dragon Quest XI did. Where in Dragon Quest XI, you can and have 7 people on your side, but you only ever have 4 in combat at a time. We're probably going to have to do something similar where, hey, you can take in, let's say, some limited number of your units, or maybe even some total strength of your units, so you can have fewer strong pieces or more weaker pieces into a dangerous area, and you may have to go in, make a skirmish, come back, regroup, change who's going in so your other ones can rest and recover, and sort of do this rotating back and forth between your piece types. And that can be a very core part of the strategy, but doing it right, I feel, is going to be kind of hard in a way that makes sense. Because we
I
don't
don't know
want...
how well this would make sense, but like the idea, like, oh, we can't take our entire battalion through this one spot, because then if we lose, then we lose our entire battalion. But also, like, well, but if you send part of your battalion, your chances of losing increase.
Yes.
And so we would need to figure out some concrete reason to not use your overwhelming numbers to conquer.
I think... Okay, so my first thought is this sort of encampment mechanic, where you designate and build an encampment, and that gives you essentially an easier way to manage resources, while you have people designated doing jobs like mining, cooking, smithing, building weapons and armor in your thing, and those units that you have designated doing those jobs are the ones you don't take in. You can, of course, take everybody in, but it strains your resources more by not having people set aside designated collecting. The problem with this, of course, is players may choose to sit there and collect resources long enough that they can take their entire battalion in, which is both a pro and a con, and we need real downsides to them doing that, such as the whatever enemies you're currently dealing with going, hey, there's an encampment over there, and starting to build up more resources of their own in-game. So, more than likely, there's going to be quite a few players that sit there and grind it out and bring everything up and then go in. And that's going to turn into us, as the developer, doing this fine-tuned balance on the numbers, so it's more worth it to split your forces if you have more than, like, 20 units.
Yeah.
Which is going to be difficult. And if you do have, like, more than 20 units, not just leaving all of the pawns behind and going into battle with 16 queens.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to make sense, because there's a game that does this pretty deliberately in the exact same way for the same reasons, and it doesn't make sense at all in terms of the story. And I'm pretty sure it's Mass Effect? Have you ever played Mass Effect?
I have not.
Okay, so in Mass Effect, you go through the game recruiting characters to join your ship, and you're this human captain called Shepard, I think his name is, Captain Shepard.
Alright.
And these are all alien creatures. They have each one has personal skill trees of what they're good at, like powerful with a sniper rifle, really powerful with a shotgun, intense tankiness, really high damage output, sort of a healer support, like this guy's a magic user, sort of. It's more like psionic ability, but same difference. And you can only take 3 down to the surface of a planet with you, and the rest stay on the ship. For no reason. So we could, for balance reasons, do that too, and be able to justify it, even though it personally feels bad, because from a game perspective, it may just be necessary.
Yeah, we can always use that. We can always use that argument. Game, not a.
I have an idea.
It's a game, not a rational retelling.
Joseph, I have an idea.
Not a historical count of rational humans.
One moment while I grab the original book. So, Joseph, what if we make this an Odyssey?
A what now?
An Odyssey.
Like Homer.
Each area is a designated island / Yeah, each area is kind of like a designated island. Or a designated continent.
Kind of already got that. Yeah,
Huh?
kind of already got that.
Yes, and we already are doing that, right?
Right.
And these designated continents means you have to have a ship of some kind to sail between them.
Right.
And you would
And your
have
ship
to
can
leave
only be
units
so big.
behind on your encampment, which is your ship, and doing jobs on the shoreline or in the town, wherever you're doing it, which means you can't always take your entire force once you have this ship.
What?
And the beautiful part of this is...
like so close to... That idea was like so close, coming in my head 10 minutes ago. I don't know why I didn't voice it. It's like, yeah, you just... Somebody has to stay back at the camp and cook the fire.
Cook the fire. The beautiful part of this is... I literally put boat rules into the original rulebook before I put Medieval Battalion down.
Why? How?
Because I had designated water mechanics for the previous war game that I was designing before Titan's Battalion shifted, which means I literally have designated chess ship warfare, including how to raid other ships.
Oh my gosh.
Already written down in the original leatherback rulebook for Titan's Battalion.
Okay, we need to figure out just like... Hold on, leatherback.
Yes, this book is entirely leather-bound. It is this blue-stained leather with a really, really sturdy spine. I've only had to duct tape one part of it this whole time.
Oh, I thought that was like your cheap Walmart standard like softback binder notebook.
No, the original Titans Battalion book is a blue leather bound with a little bit of embroidering around the edge and Sharpie title written on the front.
That's how you know it was made by high schoolers.
Yes.
Okay, we need to figure out like what our legal limitations are on being able to put some of this stuff out and still be able to claim it. Claim
what are you talking about?
Because like, I want to be able to like record videos with you and Liam and some of the other original devs of the game, and like, what the heck was going on back in 2016 with this game?
That would be a podcast, and it is very easy to do.
Well, no, like if we talk about this stuff, what is our like? How instantly do we own that intellectual property? Like, if
the
we just
moment you create it, it is copyrighted, especially if you show it to somebody else. And it is copyrighted in the sense that somebody can't verbatim make the exact same thing. They can be inspired by it. In fact, it is said that bad artists copy from one person, and great artists copy from everybody. And that is exactly what we're doing. Like, these ideas, these story beats are not completely original. They're just this combination of ideas that we are doing that hasn't been done before because we're the ones doing it in this way.
Right. You can't copyright an idea because it'd be like copywriting a color.
Yeah.
You can't copyright the color.
I will put it another way. Once... Animorphs has these aliens, which are slugs which burrow into your ear and control you from the inside. That exact same alien invasion thing exists in, it's this ring thing. I forget what it's called. But that same sort of dystopian alien invasion control the humans type deal, and the difficulty of being able to tell between the humans and the not is still an important story beat in other forms of literature, in other stories. There are other wizard stories that even take heavy story beat inspiration from Harry Potter. In fact, you can write a Harry Potter fanfic and not have an ounce of copyright issue.
If you do it right, yeah.
If you do it right. So...
Don't name any of the previously named characters.
Or even
don't
if
talk
you...
about the...
Or even
don't
if
talk
you do,
about-
you're covered under fair use. Because of parody. Okay, so parody, Parody, is not always for comedic value.
Right. You just gotta do it right and be able to convince someone.
And not monetize it, always.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can, depending. Like, for example, if... For example, do you remember a few years ago when somebody made a Mickey Mouse and Goofy short set in the Vietnam War? Where they were...
I do not remember.
I need to send you that. Anyways, in fact, I will send you that and the sequel. You will have a mental breakdown. It is a beautiful piece of art, but I want you to be mentally prepared for it. So, it's... those characters are very obviously Mickey Mouse and Goofy. Very deliberate intellectual property. They have the same voice and a similar appearance with a bit of a stylization. And it is monetized in the sense that that artist who made that thing has a Patreon, has YouTube ad revenue on those videos and those ideas. And that type of parody content is still original parody content.
Right.
Intellectual property is hard, and you only get in trouble when you're trying to deliberately steal that creation and make the same thing and make money off of making the same thing without any original ideas added.
Right.
So, in other words, someone could make the exact same game as us and just choose to make different battalions, and they can even include a different palace and shoguns, because we have taken a lot of original liberties with palace and with shoguns, but they are still, at core, base games from other things, and then put their own shit in, and be probably mostly fine legally. Especially if those original ideas are something that we have never published. Right?
Right.
Or even if we have it made in the background and they make something similar. Let's say, for example, someone makes Slime Battalion before we do. And it's just its own chess variant. It's probably on an 8x8 or some other square rectangular grid without the central. Or even if it is using our adaptation, that innovation, that new idea, that new addition to chess variant space is something that is going to probably spread to other games trying to do something similar.
Right.
You can also see this in, for example, Hearthstone, which is a card game that is much like Magic the Gathering. It's not exactly the same. Some of its mechanics you can actually point back to things like Cardfight Vanguard as being more accurate to it. But its mechanics are, in and of itself, not the core intellectual property, which is why things like, I think it's called Runeverse, which is almost a verbatim copy of the mechanics with a different beat on like which cards. Like they made their own cards for Hearthstone type mechanics, and you pick a main class and an ally class, so they add a spin on it. But the core idea is still Hearthstone. Just like you can make a game that feels just like Doom and just has a different set of graphics and story, and that genre of game sprung out of Doom being made. Same with Dark Souls. Or other ones. So once we make our game, if it is popular, there will be games that emulate our style. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Nor something we can stop, even legally, in a lot of cases.
I'm honestly trying to think of a game right now that already does that sort of like taking your base and bringing it to the battlefield, rather than just bringing your army to like a large open battlefield.
There are cases among wargames, which at our core, chess is a very basic turn-based geometric wargame versus what we're combining with which is along the lines of, say, Warhammer or StarCraft, which are this mixture of turn-based or real-time strategy. Yeah, there are cases. Warhammer, I know, has direct examples among Necrons. There's these sort of massive base-like entities that you have units inside of. One of them is called a monolith, right? And it essentially has a bunch of units inside it. It has a bunch of armor, and the units are sitting there poking out and firing while the monolith itself has this massive attacking thing on the top of it. Your base itself moves around the battlefield, and you have this behemoth of a base that you're moving around. And that's just a thing. And then I think there are also cases where it's literally just a drop ship coming in, landing, dropping a bunch of units, and then joining the battlefield after dropping off those units. In Warhammer in particular. I just do think it's funny that the perfect solution for our problem came from the first, 20 pages of the original book. And
well, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of surprised that y'all are like, okay, so we've got this chessboard, we got the shogi board, we're gonna cut them up. And instead of just cutting them down the middle and squishing them right up against each other, y'all decide you need to cut them down the middle and stick them on the ends of a go board, like a 19 by 19.
It was 18 by 18, but if you do it on the intersections,
19 by 19 go board. So
it is exactly a go board. I'm not gonna lie. The small board is in fact exactly the next size down of Go board. Because it's 12 by 12, so it's 13 by 13.
Did you know that traditional Go boards are cut with, swords?
For some reason, that makes the nerdy side of me really happy. Which is probably why it's a thing. Japan is great about that kind of thing, historically.
Yeah, like just your full-on katana. Just you get your master carver, just takes his katana, lines it up, and just rolls it across to make that slice.
Ooh. Oh, like the grid lines, and they roll that. Oh,
that's the grid lines.
Ooh, that's good.
I feel like the carving would be like any designs would be done with more normal carving tools.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we've been going at this for a while.
An hour.
Now, like an hour. So I think we've got a strong reason to call the greater flare the Hearth.
We do.
Rather than...
Which I have the Twin Suns guide open right now. I'll just update it.
Should I stick with some announcements or...
Announcements, and if you want, you can also throw in Twin Suns discussion.
Alright. Adding playtester and Twin Suns pings, or just Twin Suns pings?
Playtester and Twin Suns pings. Well, no, this is a name change, just Twin Suns pings.
Yeah.
It's not a rule change. And I will leave Hearth as G for now, just for convenience.
We could do H for Hearth and FH for Fireheart.
True. Yeah, let's do that.
Hold on. Let's see. General. Pins.
Alright, I have updated Twin Sons' guide.
Oh my gosh, the Hearth is a little castle shape for the icon.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yes. I love it when coincidences come together.
Yes.
Wait, am I supposed to say plan there? Whatever.
Alright, once you get this video put up,
You want me to just publish this video as is? I don't think we said anything we couldn't just put out.
we don't need to edit it.
Yeah, just put this video out as is, just sort of as a brainstorming operation here. The problem with this...
Set it to private.
Why?
Send me the link directly for it.
Oh, you want to
Just so I
download
can,
it?
like publish the video, but as a private video, and then I'll skim through, make sure
I see.
there isn't something glaringly unprofessional about it, or just at the very least that I can. What would our title be for it?
Twin Sons lore discussion number 1. Titans Battalion Twin Sons lore discussion number 1.
But we did a lot more than just that.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, fine. Titans Battalion lore discussion number 1. Comma, Twin Sons and boats. And now it's a title for the lore discussion number 1.
We could also just call it Dev Diary number 1, and then Twin Sons. It'd be Hearth. You'd say Hearth, recruiting, and boats. That was mainly what we covered, was the Hearth, getting involved with the other battalions, and then our way of limiting you from interacting with all other battalions at once with the boats. So, Hearth, recruiting, and hold on, I'm just gonna say this.
Ooh, so now you have a dedicated reason to A, crew your boat somehow with some sort of characters and units, and B, now we have a reason to go, hey, you can't take everybody you just made friends with you, and you have to sort of pick and choose. Because, for example, a behemoth, a dragon, a leviathan, if you end up trying to get any of those to come along, it's not going to be as, como se dice, capable of helping the ship be ran as a ship than, if you brought a few of the Frostwolves along.
Right.
And, of course, there's tensions if any
right, you wouldn't want to. You couldn't just take all of your queens from the queen class pieces from the other battalions, because then people are gonna get suspicious of you. It's now hold on, you got all of us together, but now you want to just take all of our royalty and leave our pawns for us.
Well, yeah, because all of the pieces will have to all of the units that you are speaking with will have to weigh who and what mission they're going on, and maybe like it'll be some sort of exchange would be the best case in some times where you leave some people behind and they send some people with you just to like keep the through line going, right?
Right.
It depends. That's going to be a case-by-case choice we're going to have to make on unit management and what we allow people to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that's why you won't even be able to like recruit like the stronger pieces in the first place unless you're in good standing with the other Titan.
Mm-hmm. Or even like some of the people that you could be trying to recruit could be a completely unrelated NPC that just happens to be in the area of that Titan. So we can have other unique pieces not tied to battalions but tied to areas that do specific other things. And of course they could be archetypal, like, hey, this one's more healing based, this one's more tank based, but the side quest to recruit them might be worth it. As well as just like other basic stuff. Man, this tattoo is super photogenic, and I didn't even mean to do that. I was just itching my arm. Huh.
Just casually gotta brag about your tattoo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a really good tattoo. What do you want from me? I spent a lot of money on this tattoo. Money I probably should have saved. But I had other priorities at the time.
Alright, so are we good for the night?
I think so, yeah. I'm probably going to do some minor editing where I cut out the part where we're talking about the video or talking about what we're going to post. Before I send it.
I don't know. I do kind of like just a little bit of like
just post it raw.
Just a little bit of scraggly beard in it.
I hear what you're saying. So you want me to just post everything raw? Because trust me, that is easier for me. I'm perfectly fine.
At least for this first one, I do kind of think we should post everything raw. And like, if we include like this part where I am telling you to post it raw, you know, because it's like then we get that sort of like real feel on like who whatever rando watches this gets that sort of real feel. Like, you know, these aren't like we're not really business people. I mean, we kind of have to be, but like we're game devs, not professional business people.
Okay, so it could work. I'll give you that. And it's certainly easier on me to post uncut footage like that of just us talking. And it's probably better when we're doing this to always do it in sort of a pair or a group so that we can sort of talk back and forth and bounce off of each other. So that's probably what I'm going to try to do anytime I'm recording these videos. What do you think?
Right. I think that's good, unless it's like something quick that like you just want to throw out there. You know, something quick that you want to like throw out there, and then it's like, screw it, make a YouTube short about it. You know, just like a 60-second little teaser on this idea. You know, and then once we like get a time to where we can coordinate with having at least two of us to be able to talk about it.
Hey Joseph.
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor?
Maybe.
Can you do research on how to set up a Patreon?
Sure.
Alright. On that note, if you'd like to support me in this crazy idea so I can keep doing it, a link to my Patreon and the Discord can be found in the description. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Not yet, though. It's going to take a second to get that set up. If there's a link in the description, give us money. If not, come back the next day. Look for it again.
Oh. Man, I I really need to make like a flowchart for these ideas.